I want to come back to this issue of Jadoville. Now, we touched on this, I think, 6 to 8 months ago on this programme. And Saturday in particular was a big day for Calais man Bobby Bradley. Bobby was presented with a medal for bravery at the siege of Jadoville back in 61. John Gorman is a retired Army Corporal. John, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Mark, and good afternoon to your listeners.
You're most welcome. John, it's for whatever reason, it was a chapter of Irish military history that wasn't handed down anything like the political history or the prominent events of our latter troubled years. And I wonder how that happened.
Well, we were hung out to dry, we were sacrificed, and that was to cover arse. And excuse the pun, but that's the way it was.
And that's just the way it was in your view. Listen, John, tell listeners who maybe heard of Jadoville, never heard of it, what was the thing in a nutshell?
Jadoville?
Yeah.
Jadoville was a very wealthy mining town. And there was a lot of whites living there. And there was 2 companies in Jadoville now before us. And they were taken out because of the hostility towards them. And we were sent in then, half the strength, mind you, half the number of people. We were sent in, and then they started patrolling up and down past our camp. There was a garage across the road which was ran by a mercenary, and he was able to tell them down in the barracks that we were all at mass. So, which we were, but a lot of them at mass were armed.
156 of you, John. 4,000 right. Cantaganese troops surrounding you. It became a siege, of course, didn't it?
And also mercenaries.
Yeah. That must have been utterly terrifying.
It was. When it started off, it was, surely. And we had great leadership. We were well dug in, and when the frightening part of it was when our chaplain, Father Joseph Fagan, came round to give us the last rites in the trenches. That was a bit scary.
But John, when you were signing up for the army, you were signing up on this mission in the Congo as a peacekeeper. You weren't expecting anything, or your colleagues weren't expecting anything like this.
No, certainly not.
So when the reality of your situation became clear, John, how did things change?
In Jadoville?
Yeah.
Well, we ran out of ammunition. They couldn't get any supplies into us from headquarters in Elizabethville. And they just couldn't take the bridge. And then they looked for a ceasefire. And our company commander then got on to battalion headquarters in Elizabethville, and he said they're looking for a ceasefire. Well, he said he was told there are ceasefire talks going on in Elizabethville, and they're going very well. So then he thought, well, if I disagree to this and something happens, then I'll be blamed. So he agreed to the ceasefire. We handed in our heavy weapons, such as the wire. All we had was the Bren gun and the Vickers and a 60mm mortar.
But you had 2 guns and a working mortar?
Yes.
Against 4,000?
Yes. And we had an anti-tank gun as well.
Right. Chippers, John, if that had have been surrendered, so to speak, did you worry about your fate, that you'd be treated fairly?
Yes, well, you see, Mark, my argument all along is, how can you surrender during a ceasefire and your weapons handed in? I mean, this is against everything the Geneva Convention ever stood for. You know, we were there, the ceasefire agreements were drawn up, and they were that we would do joint patrols, 10 of the gendarmerie and 10 of us Irish. And that was drawn up and signed, and this Minister for the Interior arrived, Mr. Monongo, and he looked for our company commander. We were all standing out in the open, Mark, you know. And he told him that he would have to surrender. So he had nothing. and in hindsight, he made the right decision, because if he didn't, well, we'd be all killed.
You'd have been massacred.
Yes. Yes.
And worse, John, you came home, and close to home you were called cowards.
That's correct. Yes, that's correct.
Even though you have faced your peacekeeping duty previously as a handful of soldiers against these thousands of potential, foes. I mean, that required tremendous bravery, I would have thought.
Yeah, well, you see, we were a very young company. There was a lot of them should have been still in school, really. And they faced up to it, because the fact was that we had great leadership in our company commander, my own platoon commander, the late Colonel Joe Leach, and our company sergeant was a mighty, mighty man. I put a name on him afterwards as Rambo.
Rambo?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. John, I know you know Bobby Bradley. I mean, Bobby lives around the corner.
I know Bobby very well, yeah.
You were there with Bobby, and I know, I get a sense you're delighted for this accolade that he was presented with.
Yes, I'm over the moon, because Bobby and I would have joined the army the same year in 1959.
Mm-hmm.
And we would have done our training together. And Bobby was just one pure gentleman. And my very good friend Paul Clark was up there to do MC, and as usual, he done a brilliant, brilliant job.
And this medal, by the way, John, it's unique, I believe. No other person will ever be awarded it. How does that work?
Well, nobody ever will be awarded that medal, because both Paul Clark, his name is me, and myself, we gave a presentation of a medal into the department, and I'd say 90% of what we give in is on this medal.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that medal can never be presented to anyone again.
So there's a family sitting today in Calais, round the corner from where we're broadcasting. Should be very proud.
Yes, it was, and there were just lovely people. A lot of those young lads, Mark, had committed suicide.
This is so often the case, isn't it? The trauma of it, what they've seen, what they've faced, it just becomes too much.
Yes, and then a lot of them ended in mental institutions.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to a consultant psychiatrist, and I told him a lot of them were drinking themselves to death.
But, you see, but back in 61, people wouldn't have known what PTSD was, John.
No,
but look, finally, John, I have a sense that your campaign has been, it has been dutiful, and it strikes me that you're on the home run in terms of this chapter of Irish military history, and your campaign, I think, in that sense, deserves tremendous credit.
Well, it's actually gone almost worldwide, and then the film, Siege at Jadaville, with Jamie Dornan taking the lead role, and a lot of the actors came to my house here and to get the gist of what really happened out there.
Well, they are. John, we're happy to talk about this any time, and when the story comes home like Bobby's medal and accolade, we're only too happy to talk about it. We appreciate you taking time to speak to us today. Thank you indeed.
That's grand, Mark.
All right, it's retired corporal with the Irish Defence Forces and at Jadoville back in the Congo in 61. That's John Gorman. Martin Bradley is all ears to that, our movie buff on a Monday. Anyway, Martin, it was last year the film came out?
It was.
Yeah. Was it any good, by the way?
The film was absolutely brilliant. And I went in not knowing anything really about this, because the way it was covered up, and saw the film, couldn't get over it, what happened to them when they came back. And the film heavily implicates Conor Cruz O'Brien, who covered his own reputation by smearing this company of men.
Simply because they stood up to the ceasefire, Martin, and said, we will cease firing.
They had to surrender. They had run out completely of food, ammunition, everything, and they were faced with 3,000-4,000, because they saved the lives of the men. They were actually jailed in the Congo for a couple of months before they got home. But he was one of the main men in the UN building up his reputation and trying to be the peacemaker in the Congo at that time.
Maybe one to look up on Amazon or Netflix or
It's on
whatever.
Netflix.
Oh, Netflix, okay. Martin,